My name is Michael Compton. I'm the Executive Director of the Recording Academy, and we're really thrilled to have a special presentation here for you tonight. Thank you all for coming. I want to introduce to you Saul.
Hello, everybody. How you guys doing? I'm really glad that there's a microphone, or else I'd be really nervous. I'm not used to public speaking. Usually I'm rapping. I appreciate you guys having me out tonight. It's a privilege to be here. I'm certainly humbled to be speaking to everybody that is doing similar things to me, and hopefully we'll be able to share some sort of insight into the way that I do things, and hopefully we can connect and build from there. A little bit about myself. My name is Saul. I'm a fully independent, self-funded hip-hop artist from Seattle, Washington. I was invited here to talk about how I personally utilize technology, and more specifically the internet and social media, to connect with my fans, who I call the Zillas, and generate interest and ultimately income. Little bit about myself. I've spent some time on the charts. I've sold out some shows. I tour regularly. Music is what I do for a living. It didn't start out that way. So instead of just talking about the tools and the methods and the way that I do things now, I'm going to try to start from where it began so we can kind of see the process for building a career, largely using social media. I've been making music for most of my life. I'm 25 now. I started making music when I was about 7 years old, and I found myself in the studio when I was about 11. But unless we're really going to start with my first fan, which was my middle school crush, I didn't really start to gain a following until just a few years ago. I was going to college at the University of Washington, and I had already put out an album. I was playing some shows. I still had never headlined. I think my album release party was at Chop Suey. I was probably third from the top on the bill. And, you know, I was hustling my music. I was trying to get by. And I was doing okay. I wasn't really making any money, and I had a few fans. At the time, I had an opportunity to study abroad, and I was really nervous about it. I remember I felt like if I was going to leave for a few months, if I was going to go a single day without tweeting, that any type of traction that I had built, any type of following that I had, I was going to lose. So, you know, I went to Brazil, and out of the nervousness that I was just talking about, I came up with a plan to try to keep my fans and maybe gain some new fans. And out of that desperation, I actually ended up making one of the best career decisions of my young career, and that was to release music for free. At the time, no one that I was really working with had done it before. You know, the concept of the free EP wasn't really around. I was working on my album, but it was, you know, years in the making. It wasn't anywhere close to done. But I had some content that otherwise, you know, probably would have been, you know, some of those records that they end up getting buried. At the time, I felt like they were actually a good representation of where I was. So I put together a project. I created a .com, and I released a free project. And in the first month that I was in Brazil, I got more downloads than I had album sales in the entire previous year. And it wasn't direct income. Those people didn't buy my product, but those are real listeners and real people that are now more likely to follow up through social media, to come out to a concert, to buy my CD when it would eventually come out, or even just buy merchandise on my website. And really, at this point, you know, that investment that I had made was something that a lot of other businesses do. You know, like Red Bull still gives out free Red Bull cans. I hope that my music is a little more healthy for you than Red Bull. But the point is, you invest in your product, you believe in the quality, so that if people get a chance to hear it or if they're exposed to it, they're more likely to come back for more. You know, at that time, things like Bandcamp weren't around yet. You know, SoundCloud didn't exist, and people weren't really buying music that wasn't already proven to them. You know, their favorite artists, sometimes they weren't even buying that CD. So for me, I took that chance and I took that investment in my career, and I started putting out free music, and it was the best decision that I ever made. So I kept doing it. And over the course of the next 3 years, I put out 3 free projects. And with every record, my fan base quintupled. It was the first time that I ever had fans outside of Seattle, the first time I ever got booked for college shows out of Seattle. I think my first college show, I made more money on that show than I had ever made off my entire music career. And it wouldn't have happened if Dear Friends Volume 2 hadn't came out. So obviously you can't put out free music forever, and I don't suggest that you do that with your content. But for me, it was how I started, and it worked. But like I said, I was working on my album, actually with Teal right here in the front row. I didn't know he was going to be here. And, you know, it took me 3 years to make the album, and it didn't feel like a free project, and I didn't want to put it out for free. So I had to establish the transition from that free content to asking people to pay for my music. And it's something that is hard to do, and it's important to make that transition gracefully. So I'm sure everybody's heard of Kickstarter at this point. This was a few years ago. It was a new idea to me, and again, it felt like a big risk. But something that's important for me and that I'll talk about frequently today is including your fans in every step of the process and making sure that they not only feel invested, but that they feel that they are part of the music. And for me, I did this through a super detailed Kickstarter campaign where I explained exactly what I needed the funding for, and I gave real incentives that were actually worth it. You know, for $10, you get the physical CD. That's the same price you pay in the store. You're just paying in advance. For $25, you get a T-shirt and a CD. For $150, we go bowling. I even had a goal of $500. Somebody got to sit in on the final studio session for the album, and somebody paid for it. And they were a part of the finishing process in the album. And, you know, it was a really successful campaign. We reached 120% of our goal. And, you know, instead of signing a record deal, I kind of just signed a deal with my fans. And I think that's the best thing to do as a business, and something that I took from that experience of running this Kickstarter is that in every single business decision that we make, even today, there's only one group of people that we really need to please, and that's our fans. If you ever do anything that compromises your brand, your message, your business model, the people that it affects the most are your fans, and those are the people that are going to be heartbroken. You know, it's kind of like once you cheat on somebody, you know, they don't trust you anymore. So for me, you know, the relationship that I built with this Kickstarter campaign it's the same relationship that I still have with my fans today, and that's where they invest in the music and they know what they're going to get out of it. So, you know, with the Kickstarter, I think we kind of established that relationship and made that transition basically through pre-sales of my album, so that people then understood why they should pay for this product and why it's no longer free. And I think that it was a really big success for us. And not only did the Kickstarter campaign go well, but that momentum that we built, that word of mouth, it led to a lot of industry credibility for us, and that came through real numbers and real people. When the album came out, we sold out Numos, which for me was the biggest deal. I mean, even headlining at Numos at that point in my career was a dream of mine, and we sold it out in advance. And the day that the album came out, it charted on iTunes at #1, and it was really crazy. It was probably the best day of my life, and I still remember this really bizarre phone call that my manager had with the people at Billboard, and they were pretty much laughing at us because they couldn't figure out how an album without a physical barcode was charting on Billboard. And, well, it's because we were selling everything online. I mean, we were selling physical copies too, but they weren't tracing them. But just through iTunes, you know, we hit the Billboard charts, and they printed up a little blurb about it, and they had a really interesting statistic that we're able to chart with 50% of the album sales first week in Western Washington. So this grassroots campaign that had started in Seattle was, you know, it's so important to pay attention to your home base that we're able to make a national impact, and most of it was still just happening here in Seattle. And this led to the next 3 months. I mean, I mentioned we sold out Numos, and then we got booked for Sasquatch, and then I did Showbox Market 6 months later, and we sold it out. And you know, it was again, this was all created by my fans and the relationship that I had with my fans. Even now, I don't have a label. I have a super small team, and I think the important thing is just that relationship that you have with your consumer and taking it really seriously. For me, I kind of have an unorthodox business model, as you can see, and a pretty interesting career path. After all that stuff that happened, you know, and all the record labels were calling and stuff, I actually decided to leave the country for about a year. I got a fellowship from the University of Washington that gave me funding, and I left. A lot of my peers couldn't really understand why I would do something like that, turn down record deals and skip out on tours so that I could go to Uganda. But for me, I mean, music is a life choice. It's something that I'm going to do for my entire life, so this was a no-brainer, and I took the trip. But, you know, I mentioned about not betraying your fans. Again, just like when I was studying abroad, I was worried about losing my fans. So I embraced that trip. I explained to people why I left, why I was going to leave. I threw a farewell show at the Showbox, and while I was gone, I stayed connected to my fans. I would tweet. I ran a blog. Obviously, I posted photos from my travels and stories, and I wrote and recorded music. And even though we weren't on tour and I wasn't putting out projects, this interaction with my fans kept the music going and kept my fan base growing. And actually, from while I was gone, from July to the next April, we saw a 70% increase in the music sales. So I know right now I'm kind of just talking about a lot of things that I did, but what I'm trying to hint at is the relationship that we have with our fans. And even though a lot of us here are artists and we don't view ourselves as a brand, and I certainly don't treat my business model like a brand, I think a lot of this comes from consistent branding. Everything from the way that your website looks, to the way that your merchandise looks, to the types of images that you post on Instagram, all play into your brand. They all play into who you are as an artist, and if there's ever any type of inconsistency in that, it keeps you from gaining traction. And for me, the easiest way as an artist was to just be myself and always evolve and always grow. And instead of, you know, staying locked up in the studio or at my apartment thinking of these crazy business strategies or what I should tweet next or what song's going to be the next single, I always just kind of went with how I felt as a person and as an artist. And that's what helped me release that first free project. You know, those free EPs, that first EP wasn't any good. I don't suggest you go back and listen to it after this talk today. Seriously, like, it was pretty much, you know, it was a stepping stone for me. It was a growing process. And I think including my fans in that growing process was the best thing that I could have done. I could have spent that entire 3 years laboring over that album, and when it was done, not been in a position to put it out. No one would know who I was. I wouldn't have any type of distribution, and if I ran a Kickstarter campaign, I don't think anyone would have donated. But because I built my career in the public and with my fans, I think people got to see that growth, and they got to feel it and get invested in it. I think a lot of people, there's a misconception that if you change as an artist, that people are going to be turned off by that. But I think it's actually the opposite. I think your fans are the first people that are going to give you that chance and that are going to grow with you. And that's whether you're making film or music or anything. I think that transparency is super important when you're starting out. And for me, the growth from the Dear Friends EP Volume 1 to Volume 2 was, I was 10 times the artist. And people saw that and they got excited about that. And, the subject matter, I was growing as a person as well. I was 19 years old, 20 years old, and my fans were the same age, and they were going through that process with me. And I think that, not getting overwhelmed by the idea of it being a brand, but, respecting that is important. But you have to also just be a person and be transparent and be vulnerable. At the same time, stay consistent with your brand. And that comes back to everything with quality control. But most importantly, I think I have it on the slide, the whole thing I just talked about providing the fans that access so they can see that. And that kind of builds the narrative, and it becomes a story. As far as the look goes, I mentioned about gaining traction. I think you have to be consistent with your brand. Everything that's happening on social media has to make sense. If I have music that is talking about being socially conscious and uplifting music, and you go to my Twitter and you see a bunch of negative things, or you see me going back and forth with another artist, I think that it creates some sort of inconsistency. Or at the same time, if you go to my Instagram and you see that I'm at the strip club and all I do is smoke weed, people are going to question what you are as a brand, and they're not going to really mess with you. More simply put, I think everything needs to look consistent. That's why I work with a super tight team. My graphic designer, Johnny Sykoff, either does all my designs or he oversees everything that happens visually. So as you can see, everything from our stage layout to our tour posters to single artwork all has a consistent feel to it. So does the website. So I'm going to take you guys to my website for a little bit because for me, I think that websites are a really important way to keep everything centralized. We don't know what's going to happen. Like MySpace fell off, Facebook could fall off. You don't know what's going to happen with social media, and that's why I think it's important to centralize things. So, I was asked, to come here and talk about the technology and how I use it. So I'm going to show you guys. So this is my website. Let's see if we can make it full screen. See, I would say the most important thing for us is to keep everything one click away and to feature content as the most important thing. So here's my feature content section. You scroll down, you get my music. You can easily share my music. You can go to videos or shows, or easily find a way to follow me or contact my booking. Super simple, looks good, doesn't try to do too much. That's how I run my website. It's not anything crazy. There's a web store. I'll talk more about that. But the important thing is to make it somewhere where people can stay there and view your content. If you click on my video, it's not going to take you to YouTube. It's going to stay within my website, and it's going to keep everything consistent. So I also like to do kind of creative things on the web. So I created another website for my latest video. We called it Year of the Zilla because I think it's going to be a good year. Once again, one click away, you watch my video. You guys can watch it later. I just want to show you guys at the end of the video, everything's one click away. You click like that, you're going to be able to share my video. So for me, I like to keep everything simple and clean, and that plays into my brand. And it's as simple as that. Even with the merchandise, it has the same look as the website, and you know, it follows themes within my music. With merchandise, I think that's a really important part about establishing your brand as a community and as a way for people to choose to support. Even now, even with all this effort that I put into getting people to finally start to buy my music, a lot of people don't buy music. When you're on tour, merchandise is a super important thing. And quite frankly, compared to a lot of other things, it has the largest return. You know, we get up to 200% profit on some of these items. It's just, you know, you can make them for pretty low cost, and you can sell them for a good price, and it's a big part of the business model. It also provides fans like a tangible way to support and build a community. You see, even with the baseball jerseys, we've played into the idea of building a community with the merchandise. And I involve the fans in that merch as well. I mean, for example, actually, this week we're going to put out a new merch item. But instead of just releasing a new item, we're going to release 5 different colorways and ask people which version they want to get printed. The fans will vote on it, and the one with the best vote gets printed. They're involved in the process, you know, every step of the way. We do these things on social media, which I spend a lot of my time on. I think it's really important because you're not always on tour. You're not always releasing content. You know, I don't have an album coming out this quarter, but I'm still active on social media every day. And I do things on my Twitter, like Q&As, or on my Facebook, I, you know, post photos from the studio, or even if I'm grocery shopping, what my favorite cereals are. Or actually, like, for example, a couple weeks ago, I did a Facebook Q&A for the first time. Usually I do it on Twitter because it's super back and forth, and, you know, it's easy. But we did it on Facebook, and, you know, I just posted this photo, said, hey, you know, I'm on my computer for the next hour. Get at me. And as you can see, in, you know, less than 60 minutes, you know, there's 240 comments. Those are real people that you're connecting with. You know, those are real people that you get a chance to make that relationship with. And just like when you meet them at a show or they get to come out to a concert, they then have a story and they have a personal investment in the product. I choose to do this by running everything personally. It's overwhelming at times. It's a lot of work, but I think there's a big return. A lot of artists, you'll see their social media will be ran by their record label or an intern. And depending on the artist that you are, it might make sense or it might work. But I think even as a brand, whether you're a startup company or a musician, I think if you provide a personal voice to it, I think that you're going to get a lot more involvement. And I take a lot of pride in the way that we do it. And I see artists with twice the number of followers on social media that I have that don't get half the response. And whenever I put out merchandise or music, I think it shows. Like I said, even a few years ago, the whole charting on iTunes and Billboard wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for my fans being personally invested. I do other types of things on social media. You know, I try to get creative. Not everything is successful or, you know, gets the number of likes that you hope for, but you'd be surprised. People really appreciate you just being out there and being active. And again, not sitting back editing your photo for 2 hours or thinking about what to post or, you know, creating some sort of photo op, but just being natural. You know, I was trying to think of how I was going to release that last video. We were on tour. It was -30 degrees in Montana. we decided to pull over and just take a photo and announce that the video is going to come out. You know, we chose a date, we announced it, we stuck to it, and the fans were the first person to hear it. You know, there wasn't a press release yet or anything like that. It was just the fans. Another fun thing that I like to do when I'm on the road is we call it hashtag finders keepers. And if a show's sold out, sometimes I'll hide tickets somewhere, or I'll just hide a CD or CD and tickets. I sign it, you know, and I usually walk around town if we get to the venue like in the early afternoon, and if we get food somewhere nice or if there's a landmark or somewhere, I'll just hide the CD. We'll take a picture with it. You know, if you've been to Famous Frank's Hot Dogs, you know where it is. I don't even have to say anything. You see the photo, and, you know, there's usually a group of fans that rush there, and whoever gets it first, you know, finders keepers. And it's really fun, and I do it in every city I go to. It's a little promo for the new CD as well. So yeah, you know, this is the ultimate goal, is a personal connection with your fans. Like I said, I hope to make music for my entire life, and every fan that I make, I plan on them being a fan for life. It's really important to me. I listen to everything that they say when it comes to the decisions I make, whether it's a business decision or a creative decision. I'm always thinking about my fans, and I even ask them sometimes what they think. And you know, if there's anything else, you know, the people that you work with will not always be there. The people who champion you in the industry will not always be there, but the people that will always be there if you do your job right are your consumers and your fans. And I treat them as priority number one, and it works all right for me. If you guys want to connect with me anymore, this is my social media information. You know, tweet at me or something. I promise I'll respond. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Before I finish, real quick, can I take a picture of you guys? All right, hold up. You know what I'm saying? I had to let my fans know what's up. Instagram's the same thing as Twitter. Salzilla. Cool. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.